For over 2,000 years, humanity has been on this incredible quest. It's this amazing story about our relentless drive to turn energy into motion, from the flicker of a simple flame to the absolute roar of a rocket. In this explainer, we're going to trace the entire history of the engine, the machine that has, well, pretty much defined our world. Okay, so let's just dive right in. At its very heart, the whole story of the engine is really about answering one simple but huge question. How do we turn fuel into force? Seriously, that's it. This single question has driven inventors, engineers, and dreamers for centuries. And their answers? Well, they've built the world we live in today. So here's our roadmap for this journey. We're going to start way back with just the idea of motion. Then we'll power through the age of steam that kicked off the Industrial Revolution. After that, we'll get into the internal combustion engine that put, well, the entire world on wheels. Then we'll soar into the jet age, blast off into the race to space, and finally, we'll land on the electric future that's unfolding right now. All right, let's kick things off with our first section, the idea of motion. Long before engines were powering factories or cars, the basic concept of turning heat into movement was already understood. It was just, seen as more of a fascinating toy than a world-changing tool. This timeline really gives you a bird's eye view of the whole story. And the gaps, they're staggering. Think about it. From a simple steam toy in the first century, it took over 1,600 years for a practical steam engine to finally show up with Newcomen. But then, look what happens. The pace just explodes. We go from the first car in 1886 to the first jet flight in just a little over 50 years. It's wild. So let's move on to our second section, the age of steam. This is where the engine goes from being a clever idea to becoming the absolute muscular heart of the Industrial Revolution. One of the most fascinating things about the very first successful steam engine is how it worked. It's kind of backwards from what you'd think. The Newcomen engine didn't use high-pressure steam to push the piston. Nope. Instead, it used steam just to create a vacuum. The real work was actually done by the weight of our own atmosphere, all 15 pounds per square inch of it, pushing the piston down into that empty space. It was a brilliant but incredibly inefficient way to pump water out of flooded coal mines. And here you can see the huge problem, right? Newcomen's engine wasted a colossal amount of energy because it had to heat and then cool its massive iron cylinder on every single stroke. James Watt's genius was realizing this was crazy. His solution? The separate condenser. By moving the condensation process to a different chamber, the main cylinder could stay hot all the time. This one single innovation slashed fuel costs by a whopping 75%. It made steam power cheap enough to finally leave the mines and power factories absolutely everywhere. Now, while Watt was perfecting efficiency, he was apparently terrified of high-pressure steam. But other guys like Richard Trevithick saw its massive potential. By using the direct force of that expanding steam, they could build engines that were smaller, lighter, and way more powerful. And that was the critical leap needed to finally put engines on wheels and create the first locomotives, kicking off the railway age. And that brings us to Section 3, the internal combustion revolution. Steam was powerful, for sure, but it needed a giant external boiler. The next big leap forward came from a radical idea. What if you put the fire directly inside the machine itself? Let's be honest. Steam engines had some pretty fundamental problems. They were huge, they took forever to build at pressure, and they were just way too big and clunky for any kind of personal transport. Inventors knew there had to be something better. And here it was, the promise of the internal combustion engine, or ICE. It was fast to start, incredibly compact for the power it produced, and totally self-contained. This was the key that would unlock personal mobility for everyone. This is the process that changed everything. In 1876, Otto perfected the four-stroke cycle. The easiest way to think of it is suck, squeeze, bang, blow. Intake sucks in fuel and air. Compression squeezes it. A spark makes the bang, that's your power stroke. And finally, exhaust blows out the used gases. This elegant cycle is still at the heart of most cars on the road today. So, once Otto had this reliable engine cycle figured out, the race was on to build a vehicle around it. And in 1886, Carl Benz didn't just slap an engine on a cart. No, he designed a totally integrated vehicle from the ground up. A little three-wheeled machine where the chassis and the engine were designed to work as one. This patent right here, that's the true birth of the automobile. But the Otto engine wasn't the only game in town. Around the same time, this guy Rudolf Diesel had a totally different idea to get more efficiency.
He basically thought, what if we just got rid of the spark plug entirely? His engine compressed air so much that it got incredibly hot, so hot that it would ignite fuel spontaneously the moment it was injected. This allowed for much higher compression and way better thermal efficiency, which is just a fancy way of saying how much of the fuel's heat gets turned into useful work. This is what made diesel engines the absolute workhorses for trucks, trains, and ships. All right, for Section 4, we're taking to the skies, the jet age. As planes got faster and faster in the 1930s, they literally hit a wall. Pistons and propellers could only go so fast, and it demanded a completely new kind of propulsion.
So here's the core problem they were facing. The tips of a propeller are moving much, much faster than the plane itself. And as they started approaching the speed of sound, shockwaves would form, and the propeller would just lose its bite on the air. Piston engines had hit their speed limit. The only solution? Get rid of the propeller altogether. Early jets were just raw, screaming power, unbelievably loud and thirsty. The modern high-bypass turbofan engine, which powers basically every commercial airliner, is so much cleverer. This quote explains it perfectly. The hot jet core's main job isn't to push the plane forward, it's to spin a giant fan at the front. It's that fan moving a huge volume of air pretty slowly that provides most of the thrust, and it does it quietly and efficiently. Okay, our fifth section takes this idea to the absolute extreme, leaving the planet itself in the race to space. A jet engine needs air to work. But to get to space where there's no air, well, you gotta bring your own. Or more accurately, you have to bring your own oxidizer. This state is basically the Kitty Hawk moment for the space age. It's the day a quiet American professor named Robert H. Goddard launched the world's first liquid-fueled rocket from a snowy field in Massachusetts. I mean, it only flew for 2.5 seconds, but it proved the principle that would one day take us all the way to the moon. And today, that innovation is happening at a blistering pace. Companies like SpaceX have completely revolutionized rocket design. Their Merlin engines set world records for its thrust-to-weight ratio. The new Raptor engine uses a super efficient full-flow staged combustion cycle, which is a really complicated way of saying almost none of the fuel gets wasted. And it burns methane, which is crucial because it burns clean, making engines way easier to reuse. And here's the truly mind-blowing part. Methane can theoretically be created on Mars using local resources. A total game changer. And for our final section, we come completely full circle to the electric future. We tend to think of electric motors as brand new technology, but the truth is, they're really the comeback kit of the engine world. This slide might actually shock you. Look at this. In the year 1900, 40% of vehicles were powered by steam, and a massive 34% were electric. They were quiet, they were clean, they were easy to start. Gasoline was actually the noisy, smelly underdog. So what happened? Well, the invention of the electric starter in 1912, which got rid of the dangerous hand crank, and the discovery of cheap Texas oil, that's what killed the first electric car era. And this chart, wow, this chart really says it all. It shows why electric is back with a vengeance. A good steam engine, it converted maybe 15% of its fuel's energy into motion. A modern gas engine is up around 35%, but an electric motor, it's over 90% efficient. That isn't just a small improvement, it's a quantum leap in turning energy into motion, a leap we haven't seen in more than a century. When you step back and look at it, this whole 2,000-year journey, from a simple spinning toy to engines powerful enough to escape Earth's gravity, it's really the story of human ingenuity. It's this continuous quest for more power, more efficiency, and more freedom. And all of that just leaves us with the biggest question of all: what comes next?